Welcome everyone, my name is Steve Hannay, founder and CEO of Aspenify. In today's video, we're going to take a look at how to build your first playbook. So without further ado, let's dive in. So to set up a playbook, the first thing you need to do is move to the Playbook Designer within the Designer module. You can see that I already have 4 playbooks that are either published or in design, and these are applicable to the restaurant franchise workspace that we're using for our tutorials. In addition, on the left hand side you can see where those playbooks are in our design lifecycle. Right now I have 1 in development and I have 3 published. You can equally see if any of them flow through the review cycle. Secondarily, we have the knowledge bank as a way to categorize and sort the various playbooks that are available. So in this case, I know these are mostly categorized under hospitality. So if I click on the hospitality link, you can see the specific playbooks that are allocated to that. So before we create a brand new playbook, let's dive into one that's already preloaded. So for example, in this case, we're defining as part of our restaurant franchise workspace a playbook on how to open a new restaurant. So for me to select this, I just click on it and it opens up the resource window. The resource window actually is a collection of cards that you can select just by clicking on them, and they will scroll over. So this is really the summary information and metadata, if you will, for this particular playbook. Defines the number of activities that are included, how many participants there are, and the current date and designer information. Equally, I can click on the details card, find the name, description, and any prerequisites. Because this is in development, all these fields are editable. So let's say we're taking the standard playbook and moving it from San Jose to Santa Clara, for example. And I can just make that change, and it automatically makes the change up in the top part of the screen. Likewise, I can change the image. To change the image, just click on the green pencil. The access control right now is limited just to private. What this effectively means is that this playbook is only visible within the workspace, and equally it is only visible when you assign a user to be a participant. Once you publish it, that published playbook will now be visible for the workspace. The next card is the category, in this case work, hospitality, and restaurant. The first 2 categories are a menu that you can pick from, right, based on the selection. The last one is a subcategory that you can enter, and you can select that based on your need to organize the content that you have within your workspace. The next card is the participants list. So at this moment in time, I'm the primary designer, but if I want to, I can add additional members to be participants. In this case, Erica can be a contributor. And by being a contributor, Erica is now able to edit this playbook simultaneously with me. So if we were actually on a joint conference call or in a meeting room together, we can both have our PCs open and editing the various activities and content items in this playbook simultaneously. And we will see those as live updates across each other's screens. And of course, the last card allows you to enter tags. So if I want to, I can enter a tag that's specific to this playbook, and it will just allow it to be added to it. The other aspect that we can cover while on this screen is the ability to export and import an existing playbook. So this is quite a nice feature because it allows you to take a playbook that you're working on, maybe share it with somebody else so they can work on it and then send it back to you. Or you can convert it over to a different workspace. So you export it from this workspace and re-import it elsewhere. The last element of export import, which I quite like, is it allows you to create a personal copy of the work that you're doing. So you can consider this almost like a backup, personal backup. So to make an export happen, you just click on the playbook, hit export, and it immediately stores a file in your downloads folder with the name of the playbook.playbook. And this can be a portable object that you can then import somewhere else using the import function. So if I hit import, go to my downloads folder, downloads, quick access, downloads. If I go to the downloads folder, you can see I have a playbook file right here that was generated while I'm recording this video. So I click on that, and now it loads that new version in that's identical to the previous version, right? You also notice that I only have one contributor here. I have two contributors over here because that's the one I set up with Erica earlier. To delete a playbook, I just click on it and hit delete. To add a playbook, I just hit the create button, the blue line, and now it allows me to add a new playbook with the name, a publish level, a new card, label or icon, a description, any prerequisites, select the knowledge bank, and away we go. So selecting and creating new playbooks is pretty straightforward. So we've selected the playbook. We're going to now go in and configure it. And one of the aspects around configuring is that this really defines the structure of the playbook in a workflow format. So the item that's furthest to the left is really a phase, and the indented item is a stage. So typically when you define a methodology or a repeatable process, you want to be able to define what phases are involved, what stages are involved, and then within a stage you have the individual activities. You can also consider these as the columns that will be established within your sequence view. So as you add a new line in here, it will effectively create a new column, and within that column you can add new activities below it. To add a new phase, you just hit right button, click on the add phase button right here, and what it will do is right at the bottom of the list it will add a new phase. I can remove that. If you wish to add a new stage, you just click on the phase again and add a new stage, and it will pop it right underneath the current stage for that phase. Again, I can right click and remove it. Any of these objects are movable. So for example, if I feel like concept phase needs to go here, I can just click it, select it, drag it, and move it back and forth. And this changes the entire playbook structure when we do this. Remember, each of these lines is effectively a column in the sequence view. If I move this over, the entire sequence has now changed the order. So it's very powerful moving these around, and it can definitely impact the flow of the playbook if you do this. On the right hand side of the configure screen is the list of roles, and these are grouped under a heading and then individual roles below that. So if I right click, I can add a group or add a role, just similar to the way we added stages and phases before. So now I've got this new role, I can click on it and I can give it a label, right? So let's say investor. I can update the description if I choose using rich text, and I can give it a color. And to change the color, I just hover over the color tag, and I can now change the color as required. This color is very important because it's used to represent the accountable person for each activity. So if you see this pink, it basically means that investor is accountable for the activity in the sequence view. And I'll show you how to do that a little bit later on. So colors do play a big part in building out a playbook, and it's definitely worth remembering that. Similar as before, if I want to move these around, I can do that just by dragging and dropping them. If I wish to change the order of the roles, I can do that. This is less relevant than the flow. This is a sequence, so it's very much step one, step two kind of thing. Whereas in the roles, these can be any order, However, you do want to make sure that the individual roles are grouped correctly under their heading. So that's something to consider. So once you've got the configuration done, you pretty much have the raw structure of the playbook done. Now you can jump straight into the sequence view, and you can see that the headings are now established based on the flow, and the colors are established based on the roles. So one of the nice things that we have within the designer is also the ability to expand the screen. So I can just click on this little chevron here, and it will expand and contract the library pane. So this gives you more real estate to be able to work from. Equally, you have a nice scroll bar here that allows you to scroll left and right. And if there were more activities than the height of the screen can show, you have a scroll bar up and down as well. The scroll bar up and down is actually on a per column basis, so it means that the overall look and feel can stay fairly consistent, but you just scroll up and down the particular list of activities, similar to the one we have right here. Okay. So once you've got the columns done, i.e. the flow, you can now start adding these activities. Each individual activity is you can almost think of this like a task. You know, study the options available for the restaurant, research the local area, agree on the concept, you know, so on and so forth. Looks like we have a duplicate here, right? So what I'm probably going to do is remove that one and just make sure that we've only got one. So now it's study options, agree on concept, research local area, and so on and so forth. So this little container is delete. If you see the diamond shape, this really means that this is a milestone. And to set the milestone, you just click on the activity and check this milestone activity checkbox. Same as before, if I want to edit the name of the activity or the description, I can do that very easily just by using the edit options. If I want to, I can also set the duration or estimated duration for that activity as well. To add a new activity, I just hit the plus button. It will pop up a dialog, allow me to enter a new activity, give it a quick duration, and then away we go. So that activity now is a self-contained object with its own assignees, its own dependencies, its own documentation. So I can now move that as well anywhere in my sequence. So it's a very flexible editor to give you the ability to kind of create your entire list of activities, align them to the appropriate columns, and then make sure that they're set up according to the right sequence. The last thing that you may want to be able to do is, if you think about the way typical projects work, you have a list of activities that you define, and then you use dependencies in order to create the sequence of work. So for example, if agreeing a concept requires study options to happen before it, then what I can do is make study options a prerequisite or a dependency. So to do that, I go up to the dependency icon, click on it, and then activate study options as a dependency for agree a concept, and then I turn that off again. So now if I double click on this particular activity and then I look at the dependencies, you can see now we have concept phase, concept study options is a dependency. If I wish to take that away, I just click on the light blue, remove it, and it goes away. No dependencies to display. Again, if I want to add it, I just click on it again. If I want to add others, I can do that just by clicking on them. Okay. So that's quite a powerful way to set up the dependencies within a sequence. And of course, what happens now is I cannot start agree a concept until study options is complete. So I have to wait effectively until this is defined as a complete activity before this one will activate and allow me to proceed. The last thing I will say as you go through the editing is the ability to validate what you're doing. So this validate button will actually perform a full sequence check to make sure your dependencies are correct, as well as any other references that you may have. So if I hit validate right now, it says no circular dependencies found and validation is successful. The word circular dependencies basically means when a dependency is a dependency on itself. So for example, if I'm dependent upon study options and study options is dependent upon agree a concept, then we basically have a circular dependency. So by hitting that button, it will tell you that, and it will allow you to delete that dependency so that now everything is kept appropriate. And effectively, it's now kept the reference for agree a concept to be a dependency on study options. So definitely worth hitting the validate button and helping to clean up the playbook as required for that. Down at the resource level, you also have a couple of other items. The assigned roles defines who is specifically accountable and responsible for this particular activity. We've actually used a model called RACI, Responsible, Accountable, Consulted, and Informed, as a way to actually define who actually gets to do this activity. If you're accountable and responsible, you have the ability to update the progress. If you're consulted, it means you can review that activity, you can see it. If you're informed, it also allows you to review it and see it, but you cannot change the progress or the status. This is very powerful because it really allows us to pre-populate a playbook with all of the right roles and responsibilities for each activity right up front. And instead of you having to do this for every single activity, which could be quite time consuming, we've implemented a mechanism where you can do it at the column level and then propagate it down. So if you hit propagate RACI, it will actually propagate it to every single activity below, and then you can tune the one that you specifically want to change, as opposed to having to change each individual tile by itself. So this ability to propagate the RACI and an inheritance down is very similar to the way that Active Directory works with Microsoft, for example. So that's the sequence view. Very flexible. As I say, we've got full drag and drop. We've got the ability to manage the various items and add the sequence of work. Before I move to the last couple of views here, I want to be able to show you how to add content. So for example, if I click on this particular activity, study local history and culture, and I go to my references section, you'll see I have a drop content here box. If I open up my library, all of the content objects that I've currently set up for hospitality are listed here. So I can actually drag and drop a map of San Jose that I've already preloaded, and now whenever I open this particular activity, I can just pop over to the references section and see that content right here. To access it, I just click on the link, and now away we go. We can see a directory and a map of San Jose. So this is a nice way to use preloaded content to build your playbook content structure. Likewise, if you've published a playbook before, all of the activities are preloaded as well. So if you want to be able to reuse activities from playbook to playbook, you can do that as well just by using this list right here. So as with everything else in our platform, we're really trying to maximize reuse and avoid the need to recreate anything within our system. It should store it and allow you to reuse it. So definitely reference the activity list and the content list whenever you're building out a playbook to make sure that you don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time. Okay, so once you've worked on your sequence view, the next view you have is your assignments, and this is really a version of the list of tiles for activities, but now instead of it being through the workflow phases and stages, it's done by role. So because we've been defining the roles using the assigned roles piece here, every time you define a responsible party, it will actually make it so that that role has that activity defined within it. So now if you move to the assignments list, you almost get a checklist of all the things the owner has to do, everything that the owner 2 has to do. And you can see there is a little bit of overlap here because we've assigned responsibility to both owners to make sure this work gets done together. So in many ways, although there's one instance of study options, both owners have the ability to edit it and update it, which is really powerful. Other roles that have quite a bit of work include the chef, as you would expect. Also included is the restaurant manager, the bar manager, and so on and so forth. Now, once you've reviewed your assignments and make sure that your assignments are correct, you can then hit the publish button. And to do that, you go to the bottom of the different views here, hit the publish button, and now your playbook is fully published. Gives a green symbol here, it moves over to the publish list, and it is accessible within your workspace. So that just about wraps up the tutorial in designing your first playbook. During the tutorial, we've walked through the playbook setup, making sure that we've created the right metadata and background information relating to the playbook. We've then defined and configured the workflow and the roles, and we've taken a look at how to manage the sequence view and the assignments view. Make sure when working on new playbooks that you just take a step-by-step approach to completing the workflow, completing the roles, making sure you've got the right activities, making sure you've got the right dependencies and role assignments. Leverage your content library as much as possible. Make sure that your content is preloaded, and then you should be ready to hit the publish button. The last tip I would give is, sometimes when staring at a blank playbook and trying to figure out how to start, you get stuck on this page right here. It's sometimes difficult to think in terms of what is the right flow for your playbook to be successful. And my tip really is very simple. Pick one. The perfect playbook is usually defined through trial and error over 2 or 3 iterations. It's not something you necessarily get perfect right up front. So it's very important to iterate these playbooks. And it's very easy to iterate a playbook. You just basically create one, work through the details, figure it out. If you need to adjust any of the flow or sequence or add any of the additional columns, you can do that just by flipping back and forth between the sequence view and the configure view. It's very easy to add new columns on the fly, and it's very easy to move and restructure the layout just through drag and drop. So my biggest tip of all is just begin, start, try it out, experiment. And very soon, with your first, second, third, and fourth playbook, it just becomes super intuitive, very natural, and now you can, pretty much start from scratch and build a playbook in a matter of minutes. And, we're starting to use playbooks now for all sorts of different use cases. Everything from start opening a restaurant, to running an event, to buying a house, to onboarding an employee. Lots and lots of different use cases can be applied to this. An additional tip that I would talk through at this point is, within a web browser, you have the flexibility of changing the size of the screen. So right now I have, I think, 8 columns that I can display. If I go to my web browser and change the zoom level, I can actually add more columns and make it more visible. Of course, it's shrinking down the text, but if I want to be able to see my playbook in aggregate view, I can do that when I zoom in and just see, okay, is everything laid out properly? Do I feel that, I've got everything on the page that I need to? The system is able to operate in any of these font sizes or screen sizes. So it allows you to continue to operate the application even though you've zoomed out and are now viewing it in aggregate across the board. So that flexibility can also be quite useful just to get your head around the work that you're doing. Well, that just about wraps up our module on Playbook Designer. In this module, we discussed how to set up a playbook, configure it in terms of the workflow and the roles, as well as find the activities through the sequence view. We also showed how to build your checklist by roles through the assignments view, and finally how to publish your playbook. In addition, by using the export-import feature, you have the ability to back up your playbooks as well as transfer them to other workspaces or individuals within the Aspenify platform. On behalf of Aspenify, I want to thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions or feedback, feel free to reach out to us through our support page at aspenify.com/support. You can also access help information by just clicking the question mark link down on the bottom left, access our user guides, tutorials, forum, support page, or even report an issue directly to our developers. Thanks again, and have a wonderful day.